Imagine walking through the dense tropical forests of Java, Indonesia, in the late 19th century. The air is thick with humidity, the sounds of unseen creatures fill your ears, and every step is an adventure into the unknown. It's here, in 1888, amidst the limestone quarries near a village called Wajak, that a Dutch mining engineer named B.D. van Richoten stumbled upon something extraordinary. He found a fossilized skull, ancient and mysterious, peeking out from the rock. This wasn't just any old bone. It was the first piece of a puzzle that would challenge our understanding of human history in Southeast Asia. This is the story of Homo Wajakensis, the faces in the limestone. This discovery couldn't have come at a more exciting time. The world was captivated by the idea of human evolution thanks to Darwin's recent work. Scientists were on a global hunt for the missing link, the transitional fossil that would connect modern humans to our primate ancestors. And Java, with its unique geology, seemed like a promising place to look. Van Richoten sent his discovery to the authorities, but it wasn't until a young, ambitious Dutch anatomist named Eugene Dubois arrived on the scene that the Wajak skull, and another one he found nearby, truly entered the scientific spotlight. Dubois was convinced he had found a crucial piece of our ancestral story. To understand the world of Homo Wajakensis, we need to travel back in time, not just thousands, but tens of thousands of years into the late Pleistocene epoch. This was a period of dramatic climate change. The world was cycling in and out of ice ages. During colder periods, massive amounts of water were locked up in glaciers, causing sea levels to drop dramatically. What we know today as the islands of Indonesia, Java, Sumatra, Borneo, weren't islands at all. They were part of a vast landmass called Sundaland, a southeastern extension of the Asian continent. This lost continent of Sundaland was a paradise of biodiversity. It was a mosaic of environments, from dense rainforests to open woodlands and savannas, crisscrossed by massive river systems. For early humans, this was a land of opportunity. The climate was generally warm, and the land teemed with animals, big and small. Think of giant elephants, rhinos, and deer roaming the plains. The coastal areas, even with lower sea levels, would have been rich with marine resources. It was into this dynamic, resource-rich world that early modern humans, our direct ancestors, first ventured, and it's the world that Homo Wajakensis called home. They lived and died in this landscape, their remains eventually finding their way into the limestone caves and rock shelters that would preserve them for millennia. When Dubois first presented his findings on the Wajak fossils, the scientific community was immediately divided. Remember, this was the late 19th century, and paleoanthropology was a brand new, highly contentious field. Dubois initially believed the Wajak skulls were incredibly ancient, perhaps even the missing link he was searching for. He pointed to their size and robust features as evidence of their primitive nature. The skulls were large, with a cranial capacity that fell comfortably within the modern human range, but they also had thick brow ridges and a robustness that seemed archaic to Dubois. However, other scientists weren't so sure. They looked at the same skulls and saw something different. They argued that the overall shape, the high forehead, the rounded back of the skull, and the presence of a distinct chin were all hallmarks of Homo sapiens, modern humans. They suggested that Wajak man, as he came to be known, wasn't an ancient ancestor at all, but a more recent inhabitant of the island, perhaps an ancestor of the present-day indigenous peoples of Australia and Melanesia. This debate raged for years. Was Wajak man a primitive proto-human or a fully modern one? This question highlighted a fundamental challenge in paleoanthropology. How do we classify fossils that show a mix of both archaic and modern traits? So, what did Homo Wajakensis actually look like? Let's get up close and personal with the fossils themselves. The most complete skull, Wajak 1, is the star of the show. It's a large, long, and relatively high skull. The brain case is substantial, with an estimated volume of over 1,600 cubic centimeters. To put that in perspective, that's slightly larger than the average for modern humans today. The face was broad, and the brow ridges were prominent, more so than in most people living now, but not as massive as those seen in Neanderthals or Homo erectus. The jaws were strong and the palate was wide, suggesting a powerful chewing apparatus adapted to a tough, unprocessed diet. The teeth were large, especially the molars, but they were fundamentally modern human teeth. One of the most intriguing features is the chin, a distinctly projecting chin, which is a classic calling card of Homo sapiens. When you piece all these features together, you get a picture of a robust, strongly built individual. They were modern humans, no doubt, but they belonged to a population that retained some more rugged, ancestral features. They were pioneers, living a physically demanding life in a wild landscape, and their skeletons reflect that reality. To truly appreciate the significance of Wajak man, we have to place him on the grand timeline of human migration. For decades, the story was simple. Homo sapiens evolved in Africa around 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. Then, in a single major event around 60,000 years ago, a wave of these modern humans swept out of Africa, replacing all other archaic human populations they encountered around the world. This was the out-of-Africa model. But the Wajak fossils, along with other discoveries across Asia, have helped us see that the real story is much more complex and far more interesting. We now know there were multiple waves of migration out of Africa. And as modern humans spread, they didn't just replace archaic humans. They met them, and they interbred with them. Genetic evidence shows that many people today carry small amounts of DNA from Neanderthals and another mysterious group, the Denisovans. The Wajak fossils, originally dated by Dubois as being incredibly old, are now thought to be much younger, perhaps from between 40,000 and 25,000 years ago. This places them squarely in the time frame when modern humans were colonizing Southeast Asia and Australia. They are seen by many as representing the ancestral stock, the Proto-Australo-Melanesians, who were part of this great southern dispersal route. They were the trailblazers who navigated the complex geography of Sundaland, eventually learning to cross open water to populate Australia and the islands of the Pacific. So, where does Homo Wajakensis fit in our family tree today? The initial debates have cooled, and a consensus has emerged. Homo Wajakensis is no longer considered a separate species or a primitive ancestor. These fossils are now universally recognized as belonging to our own species, Homo sapiens. They represent an early modern human population that lived in Southeast Asia during the late Pleistocene. Their robust features are seen as variations within our species, likely reflecting adaptations to a hunter-gatherer lifestyle and the specific environmental pressures of Ice Age Sundaland. They are incredibly important because they provide a rare, physical snapshot of the people who were part of the great wave of human migration that led to the peopling of Australia and New Guinea. They are the faces of the ancestors. When we look at the Wajak skulls, we're not looking at a strange, alien other. We are looking at the faces of our own kin, pioneers who possess the same intelligence, resilience, and spirit of exploration that defines our species. They adapted, they survived, and they pushed the boundaries of the known world. The story of Homo Wajakensis is a perfect example of how science works. It's a process of discovery, debate, and refinement. A fossil found over a century ago in a limestone quarry continues to teach us about our own deep past. It reminds us that our history is not a simple, linear march of progress, but a complex, branching, and interconnected story of migration, adaptation, and survival. The faces in the limestone are, in a very real way, a reflection of ourselves. Ever heard of a lost world, a sunken continent right here on Earth? No, I'm not talking about Atlantis. I'm talking about Sundaland, a massive landmass that once connected Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and mainland Southeast Asia. And living in this lost world was one of our fascinating ancient relatives, Homo Wajakensis. Today, we're diving deep into their story, a story of survival on a drowning continent. Picture this. About 20,000 years ago, during the peak of the last ice age, global sea levels were over 120 meters lower than they are today. Sundaland was a vast, continuous plain, a mosaic of rainforests, savannas, and winding river systems teeming with life. Think giant elephants, tigers, and a rich biodiversity that would rival any modern ecosystem. This was the world of Homo Wajakensis. Their fossils, found in Java, Indonesia, give us a tantalizing glimpse into a people who thrived in this unique environment, but this world wasn't meant to last. As the ice age began to thaw, the great ice sheets at the poles started to melt. And as they melted, the sea began to rise. This wasn't a sudden cataclysmic flood, but a slow, relentless creep. Imagine watching your coastline disappear, not over centuries, but within your own lifetime. What was once a vast plain became a fragmented landscape of islands. The hunting grounds your grandparents knew were now underwater. Rivers swelled, turning into wide sea channels, isolating populations and dramatically reshaping the world. So how do you survive when your world is literally sinking beneath your feet? You adapt. For Homo Wajakensis, this meant a radical shift in their food strategies. As the large terrestrial animals they once hunted became scarcer due to shrinking habitats, they turned to the new resources emerging around them: the sea. Archaeological evidence suggests a growing reliance on marine and riverine food sources. Shellfish, fish, crabs, these became staples. This wasn't just a simple switch. It required new tools and new knowledge. They developed skills for fishing, for navigating coastal waters, and for understanding the rhythms of the tides. Their diet became more diverse, a testament to their incredible flexibility. This constant change also forced them to be perpetually on the move. They couldn't afford to be sedentary. Homo Wajakensis was likely a highly mobile society, following the changing coastlines and tracking resources across a transforming landscape. Their knowledge of geography must have been immense. They would have possessed detailed mental maps of not just the land, but also the newly forming waterways and archipelagos. Each generation would have had to update these maps, passing down crucial knowledge about safe passages, new resource hotspots, and areas to avoid. This was a life of constant exploration and migration, not out of wanderlust, but out of necessity. Let's pause and consider the psychological impact of this. Imagine the stress and uncertainty of living in a world that is constantly shrinking. The very ground you stand on is not guaranteed to be there next year. This must have fostered a unique cognitive toolkit. Problem-solving, long-term planning, and a deep capacity for resilience would have been essential traits. They couldn't just think about today's meal. They had to think about where their children's children would live. This kind of environmental pressure often accelerates cognitive development. They had to be clever, innovative, and incredibly aware of their surroundings to navigate this challenge. The drowning of Sundaland didn't just test individuals. It tested their entire society. Facing such a monumental shared threat likely spurred new forms of social organization. While we don't have direct evidence of their social structures, we can infer some possibilities. Survival would have depended on cooperation. Groups would have needed to share information about rising waters, safe havens, and new food sources. These networks of communication might have stretched across the newly forming islands. This could be one of the earliest examples of large-scale social networking, driven by a common crisis. Rituals and shared beliefs might have also played a crucial role in maintaining social cohesion and coping with the psychological stress of their changing world. Perhaps their myths and stories were filled with tales of the Great Flood, a way to make sense of their reality and pass down survival wisdom. So, what happened to Homo Wajakensis? The fossil record is sparse, and their ultimate fate is a mystery. As sea levels continued to rise, their populations became more and more isolated on the new islands of Indonesia. Some may have been absorbed into the populations of modern humans, anatomically modern Homo sapiens, who were also migrating into the region around this time. Their genetic legacy might still be present in the people of Southeast Asia today. Others may have simply been unable to adapt to the final fragmentation of their homeland and eventually died out. The story of Homo Wajakensis is a powerful reminder of humanity's long and complex relationship with our planet's climate. They faced a climate change crisis of epic proportions, driven by natural cycles. Their world was lost to the waves, but their story of adaptation, resilience, and survival against all odds lives on. It is a testament to the ingenuity of our ancient ancestors and a sobering parallel to the challenges we face today with our own changing coastlines. They didn't have science or satellites. They had their wits, their community, and an intimate knowledge of their environment. And for thousands of years, that was enough. Have you ever heard of a fossil that completely shakes up our understanding of human history in Southeast Asia? Let's talk about Homo Wajakensis, the Wajak man, a figure shrouded in mystery and scientific debate. Discovered in Java, Indonesia, way back in the late 1880s by Eugene Dubois, the same scientist who found the famous Java man, Homo erectus, Wajak man has been a puzzle ever since. These aren't just any old bones. They represent a critical yet confusing chapter in our evolutionary story. What makes them so special? Well, their features are a fascinating mix. They have some characteristics that look quite modern, like us Homo sapiens, but also others that seem more archaic, more ancient. This blend has sparked over a century of debate. Are they a late surviving archaic human species? An early form of modern human, or something else entirely? Join me as we journey back in time to unravel the secrets of the Wajak people and what they tell us about the complex story of human evolution. First, let's get up close and personal with the fossils themselves. We have two main specimens, Wajak 1 and Wajak 2. Wajak 1 is a nearly complete skull, and Wajak 2 consists of jaw fragments and other skull pieces. When scientists first examined them, they noticed some distinct traits. The skulls are large and robust, with prominent brow ridges and a somewhat receding forehead, features we often associate with more ancient hominins. Yet, their brain size falls comfortably within the range of modern humans, and their facial structure isn't as projecting as, say, a Neanderthal's. This is where the debate ignites. Some researchers argue that these traits are simply variations within the early modern human population that first arrived in Southeast Asia. They see Wajak man as a direct ancestor to some modern populations in the region, particularly indigenous Australians and Papuans, often lumping them together under the term Australo-Melanesian. This group shares certain robust cranial features, suggesting a potential ancestral link. However, other scientists aren't so convinced. They point to the unique combination of features and suggest Wajak man might represent a distinct regional population or even a hybrid species. Imagine this. Early modern humans migrating out of Africa arrive in Southeast Asia, a land already inhabited by other archaic humans like Homo erectus and possibly even the mysterious Denisovans. Could Wajak man be the result of interbreeding between these groups? This idea of species fluidity is a hot topic in paleoanthropology. The old linear view of human evolution, one species neatly replacing another, is being replaced by a more complex, braided stream model. In this view, different human groups met, mingled, and exchanged genes, creating a fascinating mosaic of traits. The Wajak fossils could be physical proof of this ancient intermingling. The classification debate isn't just about putting a label on a fossil. It's about understanding the very processes that shaped our species. So where does Wajak man fit into the grand story of human migration? To answer that, we need to look at the peopling of Southeast Asia. The region was a superhighway for ancient migrations. The first major wave was the out-of-Africa expansion of Homo sapiens, who likely reached this part of the world around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. These were the ancestors of today's indigenous Australians and Papuans. They were coastal explorers, moving rapidly along the shorelines of a very different-looking continent. Back then, due to lower sea levels, Australia, New Guinea, and Tasmania were all part of a single landmass called Sahul, while many of the islands of Indonesia and Malaysia formed a larger peninsula known as Sunda. Wajak man originally dated to around 10,000 to 40,000 years ago, though. These dates are still debated, would have lived in this Sunda landscape. They could have been part of this initial wave of modern humans, representing the founding stock from which later populations diverged, but the story doesn't end there. A second major migration wave swept through the region much later, around 4,000 years ago. This was the Austronesian expansion, originating from Taiwan. These farmers and seafarers brought new technologies, new languages, and new genes, spreading across the islands of Southeast Asia, all the way to Polynesia and Madagascar. This second wave profoundly reshaped the genetic and cultural landscape. So, what happened to the descendants of the first wave, the people represented by Wajak man? In many places, they were likely absorbed or replaced by the incoming Austronesian groups. However, in more isolated regions, like the highlands of New Guinea and parts of Australia, their genetic legacy continued, strong and distinct. This two-wave model helps explain the incredible diversity we see in Southeast Asia today. The Wajak fossils, sitting chronologically between these two great migrations, provide a rare glimpse into the people who were there before the Austronesian expansion transformed the region. Now let's dive into the cultural world of the Wajak people. What was life like for them? Unfortunately, the archaeological context of the original discovery was not well documented by modern standards. Dubois was primarily focused on the bones themselves. We don't have a rich collection of tools or artifacts found directly associated with the Wajak fossils. However, we can make some educated guesses based on other archaeological sites from the same period in the region. These people were highly adaptable hunter-gatherers, masters of their environment. They would have lived in a lush, tropical landscape, rich with resources. They likely crafted tools from stone, bone, and bamboo, hunted a variety of animals, and gathered a wide array of plants, fruits, and shellfish. Some theories propose that they may have engaged in early forms of resource management, maybe even a type of simple horticulture, long before the arrival of agriculture. This speaks to their ingenuity and deep connection to their land. But what about their interactions with other groups? This is where the hypothesis of cultural exchange becomes fascinating. If Wajak man represents a population that encountered later waves of migrants, there wouldn't just be a genetic exchange, but a cultural one too. Imagine different groups meeting, sharing knowledge about hunting techniques, tool making, or even spiritual beliefs. This isn't just a one-way street with newcomers replacing the old. It's a dynamic process of interaction. The Wajak people and their contemporaries may have contributed their own unique cultural innovations to the broader human story. The fluidity we see in the bones might also be reflected in their culture. Perhaps they adopted new technologies from their neighbors, or maybe they taught the newcomers how to survive in the unique ecosystems of Sunda. This idea challenges the simple narrative of replacement and instead paints a picture of a vibrant, multicultural ancient world where ideas and people were constantly on the move. Ultimately, the story of Homo Wajakensis pushes us to reconsider the very concept of a species in human evolution. The lines we draw between species like Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo sapiens are often blurry. Nature doesn't always fit into neat little boxes. Wajak man, with its mosaic of archaic and modern traits, is a perfect example of this. It forces us to embrace the concept of species fluidity. Evolution isn't a ladder with one species climbing to the next rung. It's more like a tangled bush with branches that diverge, reconnect, and sometimes merge. The Wajak fossils might represent one of these reconnection points, a snapshot of a population that carried a mixed heritage. This perspective is transforming how we view our own origins. We are not the pure descendants of a single ancestral line, but rather the inheritors of a complex and interwoven genetic legacy from multiple ancient human groups. So where does this leave us with Wajak man? The debate is far from over. New technologies are giving us fresh insights. Ancient DNA analysis, for example, could be the key to unlocking their secrets. While attempts to extract DNA from the Wajak fossils have so far been unsuccessful due to the tropical conditions that degrade genetic material, scientists haven't given up hope. New methods are constantly being developed. Furthermore, redating the fossils using more modern techniques and discovering new sites with better preserved remains could provide the definitive answers we were looking for. Was Wajak man a unique regional species, a hybrid, or an early modern human? Were they the direct ancestors of modern Australo-Melanesians? The quest to understand Homo Wajakensis is a perfect illustration of how science works. It is a process of questioning, debating, and constantly refining our understanding as new evidence comes to light. The Wajak fossils are more than just ancient bones in a museum drawer. They are a powerful symbol of the deep and complex history of humanity in Southeast Asia. They challenge us to think beyond simple classifications and embrace the messy, fascinating reality of our shared evolutionary past. They represent a pivotal moment in time, a bridge between ancient and modern worlds, and a testament to the incredible journey our species has taken. The mystery of Wajak man reminds us that there are still so many chapters of the human story waiting to be discovered, hidden in the soil, waiting for the next generation of curious minds to uncover them. The story of who we are is constantly being rewritten, and fossils like Wajak man hold the pen. Before language, before history, how did our ancestors remember? How did they pass down knowledge, tradition, and belief across generations without a single written word? Today, we journey back in time, deep into the Pleistocene, to meet a mysterious branch of our human family tree, Homo Wajakensis. Their story, unearthed from the limestone caves of Java, Indonesia, offers a profound glimpse into a world of memory without words. In the late 19th century, Dutch paleontologist Eugene Dubois discovered fossils near the village of Wajak. These skulls, more robust than modern humans but with advanced features, presented a puzzle. Who were these people? Initially overshadowed by Dubois's more famous discovery, Java man or Homo erectus, the Wajak skulls have since become crucial to understanding the complex tapestry of human evolution in Southeast Asia. For a long time, their exact age was a mystery, with estimates ranging wildly. But recent studies suggest they lived around 40,000 to 28,000 years ago, placing them right in the middle of a dynamic period of human migration and interaction. They weren't just primitive hunter-gatherers. They were a people with a rich inner world, a world we can only piece together from the silent clues they left behind. One of the most fascinating aspects of Homo Wajakensis is the evidence for symbolic cognition. What does that mean? It's the ability to think in abstracts, to assign meaning to objects and actions beyond their practical use. This is the very foundation of culture, art, and religion. While we haven't found elaborate cave paintings associated with Wajak man, the artifacts found with them tell a powerful story. Think about the tools they crafted. They weren't just functional. Some show a level of care and symmetry that suggests an aesthetic sense, a pride in craftsmanship that goes beyond simple utility. They were creating objects that were not just tools, but perhaps also status symbols or items with special significance. Furthermore, the very act of burial hints at a complex belief system. The Wajak fossils were found deliberately placed, not just randomly scattered. This suggests a form of early ritual behavior. Treating the dead with care implies a belief in something more, a concept of an afterlife, or at the very least, a deep respect for the deceased as a member of the community. Imagine a group of people, gathered in the dim light of a cave, carefully laying a loved one to rest. They might have adorned the body with shells or flowers, things that wouldn't survive for us to find. They might have chanted or performed a silent ritual. This act of burial is a form of memory, a way of saying, this person mattered. We will not forget them. It's a powerful expression of community and continuity, a promise made to the past and the future. To truly understand Homo Wajakensis, we must look at their world. They lived in a tropical environment, a lush landscape teeming with life but also filled with challenges. Their survival depended on an intimate knowledge of the land, what we call cultural ecology. They had to know which plants were edible and which were poisonous, the migratory patterns of animals, the best places to find shelter during a storm. This was their encyclopedia, their library, and it wasn't written in a book. It was stored in their collective memory. This knowledge was passed down through observation, through imitation, and likely through rudimentary forms of storytelling. Picture a young Wik child learning from an elder. Not in a classroom, but in the forest. The elder points to a specific plant, crushes a leaf to release its scent, and makes a gesture indicating it's good to eat. Then they point to another, shaking their head. This is education in its purest form. This is cultural continuity without a single written syllable. They would have had names for hundreds of plants and animals, landmarks, and weather patterns. This mental map of their world was essential for survival, and its transmission from one generation to the next was the lifeblood of their culture. They created a durable, resilient system of knowledge transfer based entirely on action and oral tradition. So how did they maintain this cultural thread for thousands of years? Through ritual, repetition, and social learning. Annual ceremonies, seasonal hunts, and daily routines would have all been imbued with meaning. Songs, dances, and shared stories, even if they were simple and nonverbal, would have reinforced social bonds and collective identity. We see echoes of this in many indigenous cultures today, where oral tradition remains a powerful and accurate way of preserving history and knowledge. The Wajak people were masters of this. Their culture wasn't static. It adapted and evolved with each generation. But its core tenets were preserved through the shared experiences of the community. It was a living, breathing culture held in the minds and actions of its people. Thinking about Homo Wajakensis forces us to confront our own relationship with memory. In our modern world, we outsource our memory to devices. We have photos, videos, books, and the entire internet at our fingertips. If we forget something, we can just look it up. But what have we lost in the process? The Wajak people had to remember. Their minds were their most important tools. Their memories were not just personal recollections but a communal library, a sacred trust. When a Wajak elder passed away, it was as if a library had burned down. The loss would have been immense, a tear in the fabric of their society. This makes us reflect on the fragility of memory and the importance of heritage. The story of Homo Wajakensis is a testament to the incredible resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. They show us that culture and civilization are not dependent on writing or advanced technology. They are born from the human need to connect, to understand the world, and to leave a legacy for those who come after. They created a world of meaning, a tapestry of memory woven from actions, rituals, and a deep connection to their environment. Their silence speaks volumes. It reminds us that for the vast majority of human history, our story was not written, it was lived. It was passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart. The legacy of Homo Wajakensis isn't found in stone tablets, but in the very idea of cultural memory itself. They are a powerful reminder of our deep past and the enduring human quest to make sense of our world and our place within it. A memory without words that still resonates with us today. Have you ever heard of Homo Wajakensis, the man from Wajak? Discovered in Indonesia back in the 1880s, these ancient human remains have puzzled scientists for over a century. They lived somewhere between 40,000 and 20,000 years ago, a fascinating time in human history. But here's the big question that keeps anthropologists up at night. What happened to them? Did they simply go extinct, or is there a more complex story hidden in our DNA? Today, we read diving deep into the mystery of Homo Wajakensis to find out if they disappeared forever or if they live on within us. Let's set the scene. Imagine Southeast Asia tens of thousands of years ago. The world was a very different place. Sea levels were lower, and what are now islands were often connected into a larger landmass called Sundaland. This is the world Homo Wajakensis called home. Their fossils, found in a cave in East Java, show a unique mix of features. They had robust builds, prominent brow ridges, and larger brains than many of their contemporaries. They were skilled hunter-gatherers, thriving in the tropical environments of ancient Indonesia. But then, around the time of the last glacial maximum, the period when ice sheets were at their peak, the trail of Homo Wajakensis goes cold. Their fossils disappear from the archaeological record. This timeline is crucial because it overlaps with another major event, the arrival of anatomically modern humans, our direct ancestors, into the region. These newcomers were spreading out of Africa and across the globe, equipped with new technologies and social structures. The question is, what happened when these two groups met? This brings us to the first major theory, extinction. In this scenario, the arrival of modern humans spelled doom for Homo Wajakensis. The two groups may have competed for the same resources, the same hunting grounds, the same plant foods, the same safe shelters. Modern humans might have had an edge. Perhaps their tools were more efficient, their social networks larger, or their hunting strategies more effective. It's also possible that these newcomers brought with them diseases to which the local Wajak people had no immunity, leading to a population crash. This model of replacement is a common story in prehistory. A new, more adaptable group arrives, and the older, local population is outcompeted and eventually vanishes. It's a straightforward if somewhat grim explanation for their disappearance. But there's another, more intriguing possibility, absorption. What if Homo Wajakensis didn't just die out? What if they were assimilated into the incoming modern human populations? This is the absorption model. Instead of conflict and competition, imagine cooperation, cultural exchange, and even interbreeding. When two human groups meet, they don't always fight to the death. Sometimes they mix. The smaller or less technologically advanced group might gradually be absorbed into the larger one. Their unique physical traits becoming diluted over generations, but their genetic legacy continuing. In this view, Homo Wajakensis didn't truly go extinct. They just became part of a new blended population. They contributed their genes to the melting pot, would eventually become the modern populations of the region. So, how do we test these two competing ideas? The key lies in our DNA. If the extinction model is correct, we would expect to find little to no genetic trace of Homo Wajakensis in people living in Southeast Asia today. Their genetic line would have been a dead end. However, if the absorption model is correct, we should be able to find their ghost DNA lingering in the genomes of modern populations, particularly in Indonesia, Australia, and Melanesia. This is similar to what we found with Neanderthals and Denisovans. We know that modern humans outside of Africa carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. We also know that people in parts of Asia and Oceania have Denisovan ancestry. This proves that interbreeding between different human groups was not just possible, but common. For a long time, we couldn't test this for Homo Wajakensis because extracting ancient DNA from fossils found in tropical climates is incredibly difficult. The heat and humidity degrade DNA rapidly. But recent advancements in genetic sequencing are changing the game. Scientists are now able to analyze highly fragmented DNA, opening up new possibilities for understanding our past. And the initial findings are tantalizing. Some studies looking at the genetics of modern Papuans and indigenous Australians have found signals of ancient interbreeding events with an unknown hominin group that isn't Neanderthal or Denisovan. Could this mysterious third group be Homo Wajakensis or a related population? The evidence is still preliminary, and we need a direct DNA sample from a Wajak fossil to be sure. But the data suggests that the story of human settlement in this region is far more complex than a simple replacement scenario. It points towards a web of interactions where different groups met, mixed, and created a rich and diverse genetic tapestry. This idea that Homo Wajakensis might have been absorbed into our own lineage has profound implications. It changes how we see human evolution. For a long time we pictured it as a linear progression, a single line leading from ancient apes to us. But the real story is much more like a braided stream or a tangled bush. Different human lineages branched off, spread across the world, and frequently reconnected. Our species, Homo sapiens, is not a pure lineage but a mosaic, a hybrid of different ancient peoples. We are the inheritors of a global network of human diversity. The legacy of Homo Wajakensis, then, might not be found in fossils, but in the living DNA of millions of people today. They may not have survived as a distinct group, but their resilience, their adaptations, and their very biology could be a part of what makes up the diverse populations of Southeast Asia and Oceania. They are a reminder that extinction isn't always a final end. Sometimes it's a transformation. The individual waves may disappear, but they become part of the ocean. So what do you think? Were they outcompeted and driven to extinction, or did they merge with our ancestors, contributing to the incredible diversity of our species? As new genetic evidence comes to light, we get closer to solving the mystery of the man from Wajak. Their story isn't just about a long-lost group of ancient humans. It's about understanding the complex, interconnected roots of our own identity. It's a detective story written in our very own genes, and we are just beginning to learn how to read it. Thanks for joining me on this journey into our deep past. If you enjoyed this exploration, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the mysteries of human evolution. See you next time.